I'm Laurel Rutledge, and I would love to have you join me on Tuesdays from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. on KCOH TV, The Boost. You can find it at www.kcohradio.com. The Rutledge Perspective coming your way. Good morning. It is Tuesday, and Jerry and I are doing the compliance thing this morning with our masks. And I think I just posted, got one that's kind of matching me. So thank y'all for being here. Hopefully you'll be able to hear me okay. I think it'll be fine, but I'll do my best. So we're going to start with our PSAs. So first of all, the PPP is back open. It opened yesterday, and now here's the deal. They already had issues with the site yesterday, people trying to get in, and a lot of the banks and other institutions actually had a backlog already, right? So they've been able to try to get their people in that already had a backlog. So, whether or not you're going to be able to really get in is going to be interesting. And so talk to your lender, talk to the person who's doing the application for you. Go ahead and try to get it in, but they're trying to get it all worked out. There are also, I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, and there are some financial tech companies that are also helping, where you can do your application where you don't have to go directly to the SBA. They will help you. I will also try to get this to Jerry. I'll also put it on my site, but some of them are like PayPal, Intuit is helping, Biz2 Credit, Veeam. Some of these I'd not heard of, but they are listed as organizations that are helping with PPP, financial tech companies. So I will get that posted so you guys have that. Don't forget, you still got to do your census. If you haven't done your census yet, please do your census. Please, please, please do your census. Also, make sure you are registered to vote. I just heard, I think it was New York, the governor just canceled their primaries, right? Because of what's going on. So pay attention to what's going on where you are to see if it moves. I just heard somewhere else is doing all mail-in for their primary. So just really pay attention. Don't let a lack of information keep you from exercising your right to vote. So pay attention. Let's see. Yeah, this mask thing is going to be interesting today. So that's the census, the voting, the PPP. And here's something, on last week's show, I said I might have a surprise for you guys. And actually, I just saw one of my virtual assistants ping in. So hopefully somebody's listening. If somebody's listening, call BB, tell them I'm on the radio so I can't respond to Dave's message. So on Thursday, this Thursday, April the 30th, from 10 a.m. until about noon, depending on how many people join and how many questions there are, I'm going to be doing a free webinar. And joining me will be Adrian Villacorta, who was on here a couple of weeks ago, the attorney who was answering questions. He will be on the panel, along with William Dale, who is a CPA here locally in Houston. And we're going to be talking specifically about some things you can continue to do. We know we are starting to open back up. What about some things around return to work? There are some lists and some suggestions around returning to work. So what can we do to help you think about return to work? What are still some financial options for you? What do you need to consider from a legal perspective if you are now bringing employees back? How do you bring them back? Is there a certain way to do that? So we're just going to have a round table for about an hour and then open it up for questions. So I will be posting all of that information on my site. I will also get it to Jerry so she can post it on the KCOH site, so you will have it. So happy to do that. I'm really excited to get some people on the line and just get you some information. Another thing that came out, this was out on, I think it was Friday, that there is financial assistance for housing for the state of Texas. And so what they're saying is it was issued by the governor. And if you go to Help for Texans, and search for rental assistance providers in your area, there are things around long-term rent payment help, et cetera, et cetera. So again, this was announced on April the 24th, I think that was Friday, for assistance with housing. So there is some other help out there beyond just the PPP, the paycheck thing. So go out and look for that. And then something that's been coming up, and we've been seeing this a lot in the news, all these big companies that got this, some of the payout for PPP that was supposed to be for small companies with 500 or less employees, et cetera. And people are trying to figure out why that happened. And it ties into what we want to talk about today. Because what I want to talk about today is compliance. And because people think about compliance and they get all upset and they're like, oh my gosh, it takes so much money to comply and it's hard to comply and all this kind of stuff. But here's the deal. If you think about what happened with PPP, we had to move really quickly, or the government had to move really quickly, because people were getting sick, businesses were shutting down, people weren't able to be paid. So they put something in place really, really quickly. When you do that, you don't often get all of the information and close all the loopholes and get all the clarity that you need before you put it out, because you are moving quickly. It's what I tell people, it's that understanding of when you need to be quick and approximate versus slow and precise. And they had to be quick and approximate to get something out to help people. So Jennifer Takagi, I see you online. Will you please let BB know that I'm online so I can't respond to Dave? Thank you. So when you think about something like as big as the PPP program and the whole new act, Families First Act, the CARES Act, and these businesses, these bigger businesses that were able to take advantage of the PPP, if you read in the way it was first initiated, even if you are a very large company, but you have locations that are smaller, that have 500 or fewer employees, then those locations individually, thank you, can apply for PPP. So it wasn't that they were illegally or against compliance getting this money. If you read the way the act was written, at least this initial one, you know, if you were Ruth's Chris and you had all these restaurants, but all these restaurants had less than 500 people, that qualified. So again, when you're thinking about compliance, and we move into the topic for today, when we think about compliance, we want to make sure that we know, one, compliance isn't a bad word, but two, as you start putting things in place for your business, for your career, for your family, whatever, when you start putting rules and regulations or policies or procedures in place, it is important to know what you're doing, how big it's going to be, how much it's going to take to actually make sure that it is happening, and that people are following it, because you can have a situation like we had with PPP. You thought you had it all outlined, you thought you had it all clear, but there is something in the way it's written or something in the way it's connected that leads to an outcome you didn't anticipate. Okay, so really, as we start getting into today to think about compliance and what compliance means, think quickly about that statement I just made, whether you need to be slow and precise or whether it's okay to be quick and approximate. Because sometimes you just got to move fast and you do the best you can and you just plan for whatever the fallout's going to be. But sometimes you need to take your time. You need to just take your time and do it right the first time. Because my dad said, if you don't have time to do it right the first time, what makes you think you're going to have time to do it over? Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's get into compliance and what compliance means. So often compliance is seen as a bad word. And I'm just letting y'all know too, because I'm always honest in this show, is I got my little fan here. Because with this mask on, I am H-O-T-T hot.
There's nothing in the mask though, they say you're coordinated.
See, oh, thank you. I tried just for y'all. So when you think about compliance, often people get really stressed out about compliance. And the reason they get stressed out about compliance is because when you think about compliance first, you think about the IRS, you think about taxes, you think about laws around employees where you might have to go to jail or embezzlement. That's what you think about in compliance. And there are many organizations where compliance is used as a weapon, right? So if someone's upset with somebody or they don't like the way something is doing, they call the hotline and say they were out of compliance. And all of a sudden you got a big old investigation and people are being suspended pending investigation. It's just a whole lot of drama because the word compliance has become a weapon. The word compliance has become a source of fear. But here's what compliance means. What compliance means is there are a set of rules that we have put in place for the health, safety, financial protection, et cetera, of our organizations, our people, our community, and we need people to comply with the rules and regulations and policies and practices that we have put in place. That's all compliance means. That's all it means. Where it gets ugly is if you have tried to build policies and practices and procedures that are so broad, you cover absolutely everything that could possibly happen. Because one, you can't do that. There's not enough time. There are not enough people to be able to watch everything that everybody does all the time. That's number one. But number two, you cannot regulate, like we're trying to find out now, or that we are finding out now. It is hard to regulate behavior, right? So even now in Houston, there was the wear a mask, you have to wear a mask. Now it's, well, you should wear a mask. You should social distance. Well, but we can open stuff. It's a hot mess. Yeah. Why? Because we do have free will. People will exercise their free will and do and behave the way they want to behave. And so what you try to do is put things in place and then put audits in place around that so that you understand early when people aren't complying, and then you have a response to that. And the response didn't necessarily be immediately fining people or immediately firing people. The response should probably be first education. Are you sure you understand the rules? Let's make sure you're clear. Once I know you're clear again, then I can hold you accountable. And I can let you know if you fail to comply again, here's what the consequences will be. Pretty simple, just like you do with your kids. Here's what I asked you to do. If you don't do that, here's what the punishment will be, or the consequences will be. So compliance is simply a mechanism for ensuring that you are safe, you are healthy, you are following the rules, you are making sure to maintain the right level of financial protection, et cetera, for your organization. That's all that compliance means. So don't get all caught up in, oh my gosh, now we have to, I'm gonna have to fire these people because they wore, a green shirt and it's blue shirt day. Okay, that's crazy, right? So just make sure that when you think about compliance and you're talking about compliance, you're talking about it from the perspective of what are the things that need to happen for my business to run effectively and efficiently? How do I make sure that happens? And then how do I ensure that people understand what the rules are? That's all it means by compliance. It is not a bad word. It is absolutely not a bad word. So when we talk about being slow and approximate versus quick, slow and approximate versus quick and precise, especially in the area of compliance, let me give you a couple examples. So let's say, for instance, you are trying to decide what kind of benefits you want to put in place for your organization. You want to do a wellness program, or you want to go to a 4-day work week, or something like that that has to do with employees. Quick and approximate would be, hey, starting tomorrow or starting next month, we're going to go to a 4-day work week. And you just announce it and you keep moving, and then you go to your HR people or your payroll people or your payroll vendor and say, starting next week, we're going to do 4 days a week, so I need y'all to work that out. That's quick and approximate, because you have not done a whole lot of planning before that. The other side of that coin would be, you sit down with your vendor and you say, you know what, given what's going on and to increase flexibility as we begin to bring people back to work, instead of jumping back into 70, 80-hour weeks, we're going to do a 4-day work week. Let's sit down and talk about what that means, because I have independent contractors, I have employees, I have part-time employees, I have full-time employees, I have hourly employees, I have salaried employees. I need to know how to do that in a way that is going to be compliant with my organization, with the rules of law right now around employees, but also is going to be able to enable me to move it fairly quickly. That is much more an idea of slow and precise. You can be fast when you're doing slow and precise, but you're not that knee-jerk, let's just make an announcement. Because if you're doing something like this, where you're slow and precise, you determine, what conversation am I going to have? What is my communication going to look like? Who needs to communicate it? Is it something that just comes from the leaders? Do I need to have an official document that is verified by legal? Do I need to have all of my HR people online, ready to go? Do we have to do something different with systems? Those are the kind of things you need to understand, especially if you're doing something big. Now, there are other places where, for example, people will just say, hey, this Friday, it's been a crazy week. We're just going to shut down at 3 o'clock. You see this a lot around holidays, right? Right before Memorial Day or Labor Day or something like that. And the CEO will just come out and say, we are shutting down at 3 o'clock today. That's fine, right? Those kind of things, it's good for the employees. It builds morale. It helps support. And you don't necessarily have to do something really crazy to do that. And people can just leave at 3 o'clock. Now, what that also means, though, is those people who are paid by the hour, you need to make sure that they understand, we are shutting down at 3 o'clock. You are going to be paid, for the whole day or whatever, right? So you need to have had something in place that enables you to handle those kind of things on a regular basis without having to go through some crazy process, right? So you can do some planning. You can do some proper prior planning to do some things so that you can move much more quickly. But at the end of the day, you want to make sure for anything that's going to be affecting your business, your employees, that you understand what you must comply with, so that just by trying to be good or do something good, you're not getting in trouble. As the old saying goes, no good deed goes unpunished. Because you may be trying to do really right by people and do the right thing by people, and all of a sudden you're getting some kind of claim or something that you didn't even think about, because that wasn't your intent. That's not where your heart was. But as I've told you guys before, you do want to lead with your heart, but you need to act with your head. Lead with your heart, but act with your head. Make sure you're paying attention, dotting your I's, crossing your T's before you go do some of this stuff. Now, that's kind of compliance as it pertains to businesses. Let's talk about compliance as it pertains to you as an individual. Do we have a question? I heard a ding.
No, Indianapolis.
Hey, Indianapolis. So if we're talking about you in terms of your career and what you're doing, some areas of compliance can be as simple as, you know what, I really want to apply for this different job. So I'm just going to call and just tell them I'm interested. Or I'm just going to work my network and send them my resume. Well, that's one way to do it. And if you've got a network, that's a good way to do it. However, if you are trying to apply for a job that is a company that's a fairly decent sized company, they have rules around applicants, because there are rules of compliance around applicants now. And I'll talk about that in a minute. So for you as an individual to comply would mean, I want to apply for this role at this company. Here's what it says in the job descriptions about how to apply. Click here to apply. And I'm going to go through the process to make sure that I've applied for the job. And then I'm going to use my network. Because when somebody asks me, or the HR person, or my contact in the company, or somebody I just met says, and I say, hey, this is who I am. I'm really excited about this role. This is how I would fit. I'd really love the opportunity to get in. Is there any way you can give me a recommendation, et cetera, et cetera? Most people, the first thing they're going to ask is, did you already apply? You want to be able to say yes to that question, especially if you don't already have an internal referral. And I'll talk about that in a minute. You want to make sure you can honestly say, yes, I applied. I saw the position. I saw what it said. I put in my resume. I actually applied. I'm just wondering if there's a way you can make sure that somebody sees my resume, that it doesn't get buried in the pile. That's a way for you as an individual to comply with the rules that have been set up by the organization. So it demonstrates to them that you can read, and that you can pay attention, and then you can follow directions. That's really important as a baseline. Because when you're hiring somebody, at a minimum, you want them to be able to follow directions. That's really important. Because any company is going to have a lot of directions, a lot of rules, a lot of regulations. Well, I say a lot. You might have a few, but you will have some, and it'll be important for people to follow those. So by making sure that you have done the right process around compliance, and that you have paid attention to what they're asking you to do, you are demonstrating that you have some of the basic requirements to be able to be an employee of theirs. So that's one of the things you can do from an individual perspective. The other thing is, for many of us who have certifications and licenses and all that kind of stuff, you guys know what compliance means. How many continuing education credits you have to get, by what date, which reminds me, I gotta go look at mine. Because that's a problem. Because I think I might be behind. You want to make sure you understand if you have a certification or a license that has an ethics piece of it. How often do you have to recertify the ethics piece of that particular license or certification? Are you making sure you are complying with the ethics piece of that certification or license? So again, compliance is not necessarily a bad word. It is a way to protect you and the people who are trusting you. And that's really important. There's a reason that if something goes down around financials, there's a reason that auditors sign audit statements the way they sign audit statements. Because if something is found out later to be false in those financials and they have signed off that everything's okay, that's them. That's their license, right? That is their reputation. So it is important that we understand that compliance isn't just about trying to lock people in and not let you do what you want to do. Compliance is about trust. Compliance is about safety. Compliance is about efficiency. Compliance is about effectiveness. So it's not just some big bat that somebody's trying to beat you over the head with. So does that make sense? We're talking about compliance? Okay. All right. So let's move a little bit into how you then look at regulations and ideas around compliance with your people. And this one gets to be a little sticky because I've had a couple of conversations over the last couple of weeks about human resources and human resources in organizations, and how human resources people don't really help employees. How human resources people don't really understand. They're supposed to be advocates, but they aren't really. They're just puppets for the business. So let me clarify that a little bit. Just like with attorneys, with accountants, with financial people, with anybody else in an organization, with any function, you're going to have really good practitioners and you're going to have not so good practitioners. And that is a function of experience. It's a function of individual ethics and character, but it's also a function of the character of the organization. So if the organization, and I'm thinking about HR in particular, if the organization is an organization that has said, HR is just going to be a place where we push paper, or HR is just going to be a place where we line people up, just answer questions, we're not creative, we don't really do anything other than what someone else tells us to do. That's the kind of HR you're going to get. It's going to be compliant, most likely, but it's not necessarily going to be the best advocate for people. It's not necessarily going to really help an organization manage the human capital asset, which is what human resources is supposed to do. So from a compliance perspective and from setting people up and setting employees up to be successful, if you're thinking about from an HR perspective, what I would give you is this, and especially small businesses, as you start thinking about when do you need to hire an HR person or at least outsource HR services, it's not just about how you're paying people. And you got to be compliant. You got to make sure you're paying people the right way and you're paying payroll taxes the right way. You got to make sure you're doing all that stuff right. But it's not just about that. It is also about what are we saying to individuals when we have conversations? What are we doing when we are hiring people? What kind of questions are we asking in an interview process? Are we asking illegal questions? Because that's a problem. And especially in small businesses, when you meet someone, you meet a candidate and you guys are really hitting it off and it just seems like such a great conversation, and then you start like, well, where are you from? And how many kids do you have? And, are you married? And you can ask those questions. So even though it seems innocent and it seems like it's building rapport, there are some things from a compliance perspective that should you do them and the person decide that they're upset about them could lead you, out of no ill intent on your part, to be in trouble because you just weren't compliant. So getting back to HR, when you think about HR and bringing HR into your business, you are looking for someone who truly is going to understand your business as well as, if not more so, than you do. Why? Because when they do that, they can sit with you as a partner to understand who you need to hire. They can sit with you in times like now, with us having to figure out how to work from home, with us trying to figure out who we can furlough or who we need to lay off or how we're going to bring people back to work. I am telling you, I am in a group with the most senior HR people in Houston, HRL in Houston. And one of the key things that people are talking about now is how are we going to bring people back to work and do it safely? How are we going to have enough PPE where we need it? How are we going to stagger? When we have now all gone to these shared workspaces where people are in cubicles and not in offices, how are we going to bring people back? And that's where your HR person sits on the front line with you, where you sit down and you say, here's where we're going. Remember, I talked about strategy and people. Here's where we're going. Here's who we need to have back, and how are we going to get them back? So where we're going is the strategy. Who we need back and how we're going to get them back is the people. And that's where you connect with your HR person to say, how do we, in a way that is compliant, not only with the laws around furloughs and layoffs and all that kind of stuff, but how do we, in a compliant manner, bring people back also under the current rules that we have and the current executive orders that we have, federal, state, and local, around distancing, around percentage of capacity, around hours worked, all of these kind of things. how do we sit down and do this and bring people back? It is not, I encourage you, please. It is not about just saying on Monday, okay, our doors are open. And it is fast. You've got basically a week. If you're one of the businesses that can open back up, you've now got a week. Well, actually, now you got about 6 days to figure out how you're going to bring people back safely. And that is bigger than just opening your doors, because not only your employees, but also the people that are now going to be patronizing your business. So here in Houston, I know we got people all over. We got the big Galleria, and I think people like in Minnesota, it's the Mall of America. So we all got these big malls. I think every big city still has at least one mall that's an inside mall. And so the Galleria here in Houston can open on Monday. They can have no more than 25% capacity. There are more stores and more doors in the Galleria than I can count. Other than the architect or the building maintenance, I don't know if anybody even knows all the doors and all the ways to get in. And that's just the doors to the public. That's not the doors for delivery, the doors for maintenance, all of that kind of stuff. So how is Simon Properties putting a plan in place to be compliant with, yes, we can open, we want to get people back to work, we need to get people back to work, but we can only have 25% capacity in the mall at one time? Well, what does that mean? Does that mean 25% capacity in each store? Does that mean 25% capacity in the Galleria as a whole? What is the capacity of the Galleria? So how do you know what 25% is? Are you now going to only open one door? You're just going to open the door by Neiman Marcus? How is that going to work? Because people are parking all over the place. Are you just going to open the doors that go to the escalators in the underground garages, and who's going to be standing at those doors telling people, no, you got to get back in your car and walk around? I mean, it is possible. All things are possible. But from a compliance perspective, you want to open up, you want to have a strategy for opening, but you also want to be able to follow the current guidance around how you can open up and how you can be compliant with the rules. And that means you have to take the time to say, what is my data? What does it look like? How has my process worked before? And then how am I going to make it work now that I can actually have people in? Because you don't know what that's going to look like. And it could be, people have been cooped up for so long, it could be on Monday, everybody's in a car heading somewhere. It could be, because people are tired of being at home. I hope that's not the case, but it could happen. It could happen. And so, am I still on? Mm-hmm. And so I think it's really important to think about, as you're beginning to open up your businesses and you're beginning to figure out how you want to move and how you want to go, that you take the time, not necessarily as slow and precise as you would be when you had a lot of time. You got to be kind of in between slow and precise and quick and approximate. But you absolutely need to think about a strategy. If you are a restaurant and they're saying restaurants can open, but you have to have 6 feet and you have to have paper menus. Do you already have paper menus? How long is it going to take you to print paper menus? You got to have disposable menus. What are you going to do about silverware? Now, I know at restaurants, you know, the water temperature and the regulations and all that kind of stuff are where you have to, there's food safety and all of that. But what are you going to do? What if you have one of those little places that's just real tight?
Yep.
Does that mean you can only let 4 people in? Because you can't have more than 6 at a table. And what about the people that are serving? How are you going to take, I was just talking to some girlfriends last night. How are you going to take an order? You're going to stand at the bar and yell to the table across the, hey, what do you want to eat? Are people going to need to phone in their order ahead of time? And then are they going to have to make a reservation? So what are you doing to prepare? Because you got 6 days. You got 6 days to be able to make it happen. And I think, you know, people do want to go back. They do want to get out. I was talking to some other people who are like, well, I might go back, but if I go back, I'm sitting on the patio. I'm not sitting inside. And that's a big thing in this heat that we got. Yeah, that you're willing to go, but you want to sit outside. So do you expand your outside space? And does the 6-foot rule still apply outside? Now, I think so. But how are you going to manage that? Because a lot of patios are really, really packed. They're really packed. So how are you going to make sure that you are maintaining your level of compliance? You are able to open, you are able to bring your people back to work, but you are making a plan to still keep people safe. Not only your employees, but now the patrons who really want to come back and support, especially local businesses.
It goes back to even, I had a conversation with the staff here on yesterday of we have to really be strategic on the plan of bringing everybody back in.
Right.
Because like right now, you have a mask on because I normally would be the only one with the mask on, but now we know how in depth this thing has gotten, and because we are standing against one another and you're talking on a microphone, it's easier to travel. So it's been able to hold it down because I've been the only one in here aside from you.
Right.
But when you start bringing other people in and using other mics, that's a whole other story.
It's a whole different story. That changes how you clean.
Yeah.
That changes how you maneuver people through. Because again, when this person said this to me, I was like, I hadn't even thought about the fact of how somebody going to take an order. You're supposed to be 6 feet away from somebody. How are you going to take an order from 6 feet away? Now, there are some really smart people. All of these restaurant owners, we're not talking dumb people. I don't believe that. I believe everybody is going to be trying to do the things the right way and in the best way they can. But it's something to think about. And it is a lesson for all of us around how we do what we need to do for our businesses and protect our people and keep a business going, because if we don't have a business, we can't employ people anyway. Right. So it's that balance of how you do all of that. And so if you only have 10 tables in your restaurant, does that mean you only open 4? Does that mean you only open 2? Because is it 60% of 25% of tables, or is it 25% of people that come in?
Let me ask this question. Would it be worth the cost of opening it up like that?
See, that's the thing, Jerry. As we talked about many times, strategy. You have got to know your business. You've got to know your data, right? How much does it cost you to open up? That means electric. That means gas. That means employees. How much is it going to cost you to keep those lights on, to run that stove, to run that kitchen, to run that refrigerator, to do all that kind of stuff if you can only have 2 people in there at a time? Does that really make sense right now? Or maybe hey, we're opening our patio, but now that your patio is open, maybe you work with, I'm thinking about kind of those strip centers that may have multiple restaurants. Now this may sound crazy, but this is just my brain working. Those strip centers that may have multiple restaurants, and it might really be crazy because everybody drives, but maybe people actually start taking up some spots in the parking lot, right? So they have their patio, but maybe they do some outside seating. Just take up the first few spots, just like people now put their sign in front of their store that says this is parking only for the UPS store, this is parking only for. Block off 4 or 5 spots right in front of your restaurant if you can. Set out some tables. So maybe your patio can only have 2 tables, but if you take a few spots, maybe you can add 4 more. I don't know.
That ain't bad, because when you think about Sonic,
it's outside.
They should be killing the game.
It's outside.
It's outside, and churches are having outside services like that and serving to cars. So that's a good idea.
I just saw they called it a drive-in funeral. I just saw that the other day. That looked like an old drive-in theater. So I guess they live streamed it or something. But I can't talk about that because that's just so that is one of the things that just devastates me. People who are losing people and not able to celebrate their life. But those are the kind of things when you talk about strategy and being compliant. How can you continue to be compliant but also be creative? Right? Can you go put some more tables out there? So you're still at 25% capacity, but you also don't have people inside breathing air conditioning with recycled air, which they don't know for sure, but are thinking is some of the challenge with spreading.
Yeah. That's why you got to take the mask on.
That's why I got the mask on, right? Because we definitely need some air in here. It's good right now. So how do you, as when you think about bringing your people back to work and you think about being compliant, have you gone through, just like we talked about the stop, start, continue, have you thought about your return to business plan? Because we've all been so caught up in how we deal with now. And remember, we said early, this is normal for now. This ain't gonna be normal forever.
Yeah.
And have you taken the time, now that you're at home, to think about your return to business plan? When are you gonna open up? How are you gonna open up? Are you gonna do a soft open? Depending on what they've told us around regulations, can you do a harder open? Have you made a plan to figure out how you're going to go back to business?
Because I heard a doctor say on CNN today, even if you open up the restaurant, you have to calculate how many people are touching that doorknob.
Yes.
And you have to clean your hands after every touch.
Yes.
How is that going to be possible? And as I said to you earlier, I said, I told someone not to come in here yet. I don't need to clean it. And they came anyway. And so I had to maneuver around what was touched, how was this
exactly
moving. So, yeah, that's a lot to think of.
And I have to wonder, I'm thinking now, maybe I need to invest in those electronic door people, right? Because maybe if you've got a storefront restaurant, you need a touchless entryway.
That's just what I said yesterday, that's what I need to call in to do that.
I mean, H-E-B and those, they have those little cameras and it just opens when you go in. Again, how are you planning? How are you planning for that? And that is an investment, right? So if you're changing and you have to talk to your landlord or if you don't own the building, how are you making modifications to kind of adjust some of this stuff? Can you get to touchless entry for some things, right? The paper menus is really good because I'm telling you, some menus, I walk in places, I'm like, ooh.
That's nasty, yeah.
So going to disposable menus, how are you making sure that you are extremely careful in cleaning of your utensils, your silverware, your plates, your glasses? If it were me, I might be bringing my own glass, my own straw, my own silverware. That might be a new normal. I don't know. And what are you going to do about that? Is that okay? Is that not okay?
So who should be in charge of these methods and these plans? Because if the governor is saying this can be opened up, people are going to be excited about getting back to work because I saw so many people at Galveston and nobody was really social distancing.
Right.
Who is responsible for that?
So, one, that's a really good question. So this is Laurel's opinion on who's responsible. One, I think each individual is responsible for their own behavior. At the end of the day, we're all responsible for our own behavior. If you are running a business that has been now deemed as a business that can be open, you also have a responsibility to your patrons, to your public, to your employees, to your clients, to open in a way that is not only compliant with the the executive orders that we've been given, but also takes into account the safety of those that you are trying to serve. That is your responsibility as a business owner and as a leader to take control of that situation and do everything you can to not only be compliant, but also to really be innovative around how can we be safe. Because here's the deal. If you've been doing what we've been talking about and you've been planning, you have been looking at your finances, you have been determining whether or not you can go back, this is also not the time to get desperate. Because when you're desperate, you do desperate things. So yes, you need to open. Yes, you want to get your people back to work. You want to start generating revenue. And if all of us don't pay attention, we're going to be right back in our houses. Because we're going to see such a spike. And not just because we're testing more people, but we're going to see much more spike of people getting sick because we haven't been cautious.
Okay, legally, when you say about compliance, when you said that, and I'm thinking hair salons. Let's say you go get your hair done, but your hairstylist says, I don't like to wear the mask. It's not legally, I'm not obligated to wear a mask. You still have a choice whether you're going to have to sit up there with your mask on, but she's not having a mask on.
Absolutely.
So what about if an employee comes back to work and you say, we're going to wear a mask, but they say it's not legally constitutional for me to have to wear a mask.
So here's what's interesting about that. If it's your business and you are requiring that anyone who works here now must wear a mask unless you have a health reason for not doing so, you are perfectly within your right to do that as a business. Just like you're within your right as a business to say we're going to work from Monday through Saturday, or here we're going to do business casual dress here, or you have to wear a suit here. You can put rules in place for your business. Now they can't be rules that put people in harm's way, right? And that's why I say it's always about tempering. So you can say for the next 3 months, for the rest of the year, whatever it's going to be, when you come to work, you are required to wear a face covering of some sort, right? So what I wouldn't say is you are required to wear an N95 mask when you come to work. One, can you even get those?
I know.
Because so you don't want to put up a barrier where people won't come to work. They can't come to work because then you as an employer are going to have a hard time firing them for not showing up when you put a requirement that's impossible to meet. So you need to have a requirement that is possible and probable. You must wear some kind of face covering when you come to work for the next 60 days, the next 90 days, what have you. If you are unable for some reason make sure that you speak to your supervisor and or your HR representative so we can understand what next steps we need to take.
Let me ask this question. Now, the governor did say, he said, somebody asked the question yesterday, and they said, the people are saying they're not comfortable with leaving out of shelter in place. Do they have to go back to work? He said, you can do what you want to do. Go back to work. Don't go back to work. Do what you want to do. But will I not be allowed to get unemployment if I go back to work?
See, there's where that sounds real good, but then it butts up against the realities of employment law. The way unemployment is working now, even though the expanded rules where if you are a freelancer or independent contractor, you could apply for unemployment. If you have been furloughed or laid off and your company opens back up and says, come back to work, I'm making you an offer, your job is open, come back, and you decide not to come back, you have essentially quit. You are no longer eligible for unemployment. So all of that stuff out there that says, well, people are not going to go back to work because they can make more money with unemployment. Not if somebody offers you your job back and you say no, you have quit.
Really?
You have quit. Yes. Yes. You have fundamentally quit your job. And so don't be so quick to say people can just stay home. Now, I like to operate in shades of gray because nothing is really black and white except death and taxes. And taxes are negotiable. If you have someone and you say, hey, we're opening back up, your job is ready. They say, you know what, I just can't. I can't come back yet. You need to get some counsel from an HR person or a legal person and start asking some questions. Is this just because this person doesn't want to come back? Do they have a sick kid at home? Do they have sick parents at home? Have they recently been around someone who had COVID-19? So we're opening up on Monday, but there may be some people who still need to quarantine another 14 days. So it's probably in your best interest to at least ask some questions or have a questionnaire ready for those people who say, yeah, I know we're opening back up, but I'm not ready. So just give yourself a little bit of leeway. Talk to an HR professional, talk to an attorney, depending on your business, so that you don't set yourself up for a claim. Because there could be some instances where someone may not come back on Monday, but they may be able to come back at some later date. And you guys know your people. You know your people who are just chomping at the bit to get back. And you know your people who didn't want to come to work when everything was fine.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I know.
So, so just use common sense and caution.
Okay, let's say we have the facts that this thing has not peaked or that it hasn't met the plateau and it's naturally dangerous. And you have all the facts. That's not a good enough excuse to say, I can't come back because I'm terrified.
So, well, you can be terrified, and it is a good excuse to not come back. But it is not necessarily a reason that you can still get unemployment.
Wow.
Now, if you are so terrified that you are now under the care of a therapist and you now have an excuse that says this person now has, a phobia and cannot leave their home for this period of time and they are under a doctor's care, that's different. And that's why I say, this is a period of time where you may need to ask a few more questions. Just be very careful about the questions you ask. Because you don't want to ask protected health information. You don't want to ask such detailed stuff that's going to get you in a place where somebody can say you discriminated against them. But you might need to ask a couple of more questions if someone says, I'm just not ready. Or I can't come back to work. What does that mean? What does it mean you can't? Right? What does it mean you can't? Because there are some people who are like, oh, please open up on Monday. I'm ready. I'll be there before the doors open. But there are other people, because of the situation that we're in, who now still may have, a single parent homeschooling kids, what they're going to do.
Yeah, because they don't have a babysitter.
What are they going to do? So I just say, lead with your heart, but act with your head. Ask that extra question. Don't assume that people are just trying to get over. It's the 80-20 rule. 80% of people are trying to do the right thing. It's only that 20% that are doing shady stuff. So don't treat your 80% like they're the 20% shady.
Let me ask this question. Could it be why the governor said you can wear masks or you don't wear masks? It's up to you. I'm not making that mandatory. Because if you go back to these jobs and you don't feel safe, they're not obligated to purchase your protective gear.
Yeah, that is true. So there are some companies, depending on the kind of work they do, that are required to have, PPE, healthcare and all that kind of stuff. Other businesses are probably not required. That's where business owners get to decide who they want to be and what they can afford. So they may not be able to afford, if you're a very small business, you may not be able to afford to go buy masks for everybody. That just may not be something that's in your budget. You can either bring people back to work or you can buy a bunch of masks. But what you might be able to do is connect your people with somewhere that can get them at a discount. Maybe you have somebody in your network. Hey, I can't afford to do this, but I know my people are going to want masks. Can I send them to you? Can we work some kind of barter out where, you know, you send your people here, I give them a discount on food, and I send my people there, you give them a discount on masks. This is a great time to get back to some of the barter system. Legal barter.
Yeah.
Legal barter.
Yeah.
Right? So you're not necessarily required to do those things unless it is fundamentally a part of your business, but it is something that you should seriously consider. You should seriously consider, what are the things that I can do to make my people as comfortable as possible as I'm asking them to come back to work? To make me as comfortable as possible, because I'm sitting up in there with them too. It's not just them coming back to work, I'm there too.
Yeah.
So I need to protect me and my family as well. So what can you do to support? What can you do to support? And still be able to open back up, right? So we talked many times about, this is an opportunity to be really creative. We've seen a lot of people be creative and innovative. This is a great time to do that. It's the same thing around planning your return to work, planning your reopening of your business, planning how you are going to keep people safe and secure, because this is also about trust. Are you going to have, what kind of wash stations do you have? How are you going to regulate when people wash their hands? How are you, or are you, you know, depending on what kind of business you're in. I think about the hair salons and nail salons in particular, which for me, again, just Laurel's opinion, some of the cleanest, because some of those places are cleaner than any restaurants you go to.
True.
With the licenses they have and the kind of stuff they have going through there, the last thing they want is for people to be walking out of their salon with all kinds of fungi on their fingers and toes, or head lice or something like that, right? So they are truly, you know, salons, small gyms, like personal training gyms. These are places that I think have really gone the extra mile because of fundamental pieces of their business to be very clean. Yet they have to wait till the middle of the month. And I'm not so sure about some restaurants. You know, who was it, Marvin Zindler? He used to say slime and ice machine, right? So I'm just saying, don't automatically.
It was junky. They were junky from day one. Another employee that was always thoroughly clean. Mm-hmm. You're letting them back. Can you keep the junky one away for a while and allow the one you know to clean up?
Right. So this is where it gets back to your plan of how you bring people back to work. So there are some rules about bringing back furloughed employees. Sometimes it's the first ones you sent out are the ones you bring back. Sometimes it's tenure. Sometimes it's the specific job you bring back. You need to work with your attorney or your other counsel to make a plan for how you can bring people back. The challenge in the question, at least the way you asked it, is if these two people are doing the same job, there's no real difference between their job. And what this is really a performance issue. That's different.
Okay.
Because you should have handled the performance issue before, right? You should have been having conversations about cleanliness before. So now you're deciding to bring people back. You cannot indiscriminately punish someone for behavior that they were exhibiting that you didn't feel was important enough for you to address before you furloughed them or laid them off.
Yeah.
That can be seen as discriminatory behavior. So you might just have to have that person come back in. But it's also an opportunity for you now to really step up your game as a leader to say, here's how we operate. This is what cleanliness means here. And yes, we're going to be monitoring.
That's good.
We're going to be monitoring. Before you touch anything, not only do you have to have washed your hands, but there are hand sanitizer stations everywhere. It is expected that you wash your hands and sanitize your hands before you touch anything, before you talk to anybody, before you do anything, right? So you can put additional rules and stuff in place, and then you got to monitor it. You've got to monitor it.
You gave me an idea when you said that, though. When you talked about the hand sanitation,
yes,
and have them everywhere, but I also thought about these mics. Everybody would have to put their own personal mic cover on and take that mic cover off. So
absolutely.
When you said that,
absolutely. And you would still want to go through and sanitize them afterwards anyway, but at least there's a barrier of protection over the mics. That's a thought, Jerry.
That is a thought.
To just have that, what is it, that foam stuff?
That foam stuff, I have several of those, so everybody should have their own, and then you wash them every day and make sure that they're washed. Because I saw a church service where they were having full-blown church, but the leader, several people were coming up and they were grabbing the same mic and talking in the same mic, and I'm like, oh my God.
That's a little scary.
Yeah, very
That's
scary.
A little scary. Yeah, so it's really critical that that you think more broadly about cleanliness. Because again, when all this first started, the first thing they were saying is wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands. And I was like, didn't we learn to do that in kindergarten, to wash your hands?
But did we do it as long as they say?
Okay. You know, well, so I'm the child of a nurse, so we you know, so yeah, so we washed our hands thoroughly. We didn't have a choice. But you're right. I don't know that everybody washed them as thoroughly and made sure between their fingers and all that kind of stuff, right?
All day, every day.
All day, every day. Hands cracked and dry, you know, but clean. But here's the deal. As we start to go back, now we have a different understanding and attitude around what cleanliness really means. I'm actually kind of hoping, I am hoping that continues. Because I just cannot tell you how many times I have gone into places and walked and been in bathrooms or restrooms, public restrooms, and seen people walk out of a stall and walk right out.
Oh my God.
And it makes you want to just go out and follow somebody and just beat them.
Oh.
But that's not the right thing to do.
It could be.
Right?
Yeah.
So hopefully this will give people a better idea of what it really means to be clean, what it means to be in this world not on your own or by yourself, because there are other people that exist in this space with you. And I think we had gotten a long way away from recognizing that we are not in this alone, that it's not just about us. You know, I have a cousin that we always say, you know, it's not about you. It's not always about you. Well, this is clearly demonstrating that this isn't always about us, right? It's about that person with the compromised immune system.
Yes.
It's about that person who is elderly. It's about that person who you may not know has an issue, but does.
Yeah, and that's true.
You know, it's not about you all the time.
Yeah.
It is not about you. So hopefully this will bring us to a place where people really understand it can't be about us all the time.
Yeah.
Not if we are all going to survive this in a way that moves us forward. We have to be cognizant and recognize that we are not in this alone, and we depend on each other more so now than I think we ever realized.
Yeah, it's important that you say that, because I did tell someone the other day, it's really not about you. It's about, we have to look out for each other. You have a compromised immune system, and I don't want to catch anything, but I'm also looking out for you as well. So we have to look out for one another. And so if right now the best way to do that is to wear a mask and to make sure we're washing our hands, everyone should want to comply.
Absolutely. Just get a cute mask. There's so many people making masks now. Go get you something cute, match your outfit like I did today. I can't guarantee that'll be next week, but I'm going to try. Make sure you're doing something, you know, just go. I mean, I don't know. This mask thing is probably going to be with us for a little while. And so how can you just own it? Pump up your eyes, you know. Like I posted today, Tyra always talked about smile with your eyes, right? So, you know, what can you do to just, I mean, because it just is what it is. There's so many things that are worse. There's so many things that are worse. Being in here with a mask, as hot as I am, there's so many things that are worse.
Yeah, but I'm at that stage that I have, you know.
Yeah, personal summers.
Personal summers anyway. But you know what? I'd rather have an ugly mask than a beautiful coffee.
Okay.
You better shout.
All right, Jerry. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Think about it.
It is, you know, it is, just make it a fashion statement.
Yeah.
Make it a fashion statement. Or not. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Just cover your face. Just cover your face. And they're already telling you.
I do commend the mayor for them, because all of his people on staff are wearing their masks. Right, right. And I think that's a sign of good leadership, lead by example.
Right. Well, and we talked about it. I actually sent a note to some people in my mastermind. I'm like, man, I need to wear a mask on Tuesday, but then I'm going to be on camera in this mask. Do I really want to be on camera in a mask? I said, but on the other hand, I really want to show compliance. I want to show that I get it. And so everybody to a person was like, you need to wear the mask.
You need to wear a mask.
It shows leadership. It shows, you know, and I'm like, you know, you're right. That's just about being cute.
And if I ain't worried about you spitting on me.
Right? That's just about, I just wanted to be cute on camera. Well, I figure, you know, my mask matches, so I got a little cute today.
Yeah, because you came, and then when we think about this, you came before all this happened. And so now you have to learn how to transition. Right. Into those things. And what about a person that is hard to transition? Because you were here before this happened, so we had to make some changes and do some transitioning. together.
It's about flexibility, and I'm actually interviewing somebody today for my podcast who is an expert around change management. Change is hard. I interviewed somebody yesterday, even talking about changing jobs. Change is hard. And so while we think it's really easy, somebody doesn't like their job, they're just going to move to something else, it is hard to make the decision to change.
Yeah.
It is hard to make the decision to change. So it is hard to sometimes be flexible, especially if you've been doing something a long time, because you get in a routine. Yeah. That's your routine of how you do stuff. So if you don't do it the way you've always done it, you have to think, and we get lazy. We get lazy and we want to just do things by habit. And so if we are going to make it through this, and if we are going to protect each other and protect ourselves, we've got to find a way to adapt and be a little bit flexible. And to understand that it's not just about us.
Yeah.
It is not just about us. So
it's not about just wanting to get back to something, because you made some valid points, and I want to just really say that you've done a detailed job on your show. But you made some valid points, because you do have to strategize.
Yes.
With the restaurants, with the hair salons. When they say go back, what are you going to do, and how are you going to maneuver going back? Because going back will not be the same.
No.
And even like I said, when the lady came in and cleaned, it was really a lot of effort to think, okay, how do I maneuver now that I know someone else was in here touching stuff? And that's a lot of work. So
it's a lot of work.
That was something I never even thought about, even though I still come in and clean up stuff.
Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, so we can't be so gung-ho to get back and not be safe.
Not be safe and not be smart.
Yeah.
Proper prior planning prevents poor performance.
Ooh, say it again.
Proper prior planning prevents poor performance. 6 P's.
6 P's.
Just make sure, the time you spend putting a strategy in place ahead of time will save you so much time at the back end. It's going to save you so much time at the back end. So just take a minute, take 5 minutes, and just think about, how do I want to do this? I think about the salon that I go to, and it's a pretty open space. I think they're like 6 chairs or something. It's not a huge salon. And they are pretty spread out. The chairs are 6 feet apart. But the bowls for washing are not. And the dryers are not. Right? Because those are smaller spaces. Now it's all open, but still, you're right next to somebody. So when I think about that, as much as I want to get all, in my feelings about I need to see Ashley, here's the reality. That's really close.
Yes,
and you're right up on somebody washing hair.
Yep. And they're breathing on you.
And they're breathing on you. You breathing on them. It just, as I can figure out how to do my hair.
It looks good.
Thank you. I don't want to do it, but want to and can are 2 different things. So just take a minute, guys. Just take a minute, number one, to understand that being compliant with rules and regulations is not a bad word. And it doesn't have to take a whole lot of effort, and it doesn't mean that you can't do some of the things you want to do. Thank you, Marsha. Oh, and I need to give a shout out to my Sarah Marsha and to Tom Yam and Haslana, because that's where I got the mask from Gory Village. So they're doing some things to really build up some schools and libraries and things in Chad, and they were making bags and purses and all this kind of stuff, and they changed their process to start making masks. So this is one of the masks.
Can I give a shout out to your people?
Yes.
They're tuned in on KCOH Radio. They're saying, Pamela Davis says, good morning.
Good morning.
Tisha Hawkins says, great compliance explanation. It is not a bad word. This is so helpful. Leela says, do you think that employers will be providing employees diagnostic testing and the state or federal government doesn't have the capacity to do so? Should they budget for this?
That's actually a good question. I don't think it's a bad idea to offer it as an individual business. I think the challenge will be getting your hands on it. Because if hospitals are having trouble getting their hands on tests, I think individual businesses may have just as much trouble. But I think it's a great idea. It's part of wellness programs and all of that. We do flu shots at companies. They offer flu shots. Why not offer COVID testing? I think it's a great idea. How you do it, I don't know, but I think it's a great idea to figure it out.
It was said, this is a great time for innovation and startups to step into this space.
Absolutely.
For example, developing antiviral gloves, at-home testing kits, thermal and affordable temperature strips, disposable menus that you can take home and plant with gloves, herbs, and possibilities.
Ooh.
We talked about that too.
I love that.
Yeah, planting.
Yeah, to infuse the paper with like seeds and stuff. And then
Yeah.
people, oh, that's a great idea. That's right. It's about creativity. Thank you guys so much for chiming in and for listening. I so appreciate it. We're going into next week will be starting month 3, Jerry. Woo! Starting month 3. So I so appreciate you guys. This is awesome, awesome, awesome. I love spending time with you. I will continue to try to bring you as much information as I can. One more time before I go, and I'm hoping they're not telling me that it's not going to go. The webinar I'm going to do for you guys is going to be April 30th. I will get the information to Jerry. I will also have it on my social media. It's a free webinar. You do need to sign up because I'm doing it on Zoom. I want to make sure we don't get Zoom-beat or whatever they're calling it. Zoom bombed. We don't get Zoom bombed. So when they've been hacking into Zoom meetings and putting up like racist stuff. Some people have been putting up porn. Yeah. So you need to be careful with your Zoom meetings. So it's going to be Thursday from 10 a.m. Central to about noon Central. A round table in the beginning and then question and answer. Mostly for small businesses, but if you got other questions, just ask. We're happy to be there. Adrian's going to be on, our lawyer, and then William Dale's going to be on, our CPA. So thank you for tuning in. It's about that time, right, Jerry?
It's that time.
Yeah. Thank y'all. I really appreciate you being here. Thank you, Indianapolis, right? And I know we had Odessa, Texas.
Your hometown is
yeah,
on.
And we had Carlsbad, California. Dallas.
California's on.
Love it.
St. Louis, Missouri.
Ooh, St. Louis. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it, everybody. We will see you next week.
All right.